Back on Inside Tennessee on this Sunday morning, along with my colleague John North, we are welcoming the superintendent of Knox County Schools. Dr. Rysewyk, you have long been in the classroom, teacher, principal, you're now superintendent. At a personal level, is arming teachers a good idea, yes or no?
Yeah, I would say that's complex. The question as far as that goes is complex. I'll say, for Knox County Schools, we really believe in our security plan. We have a great relationship with both Chief Noel and Sheriff Spangler. They're in our schools. Their officers are there. We train with them. We do trainings in the summer with them. I've been part of those with Homeland Security, FBI, all the things that we do. And then we have a security division that's bonded by the Sheriff's Department. And we have highly trained armed officers in every school. And we have that every day. So for us, that security plan, I feel really confident about. It's not new for us to think about it. This law didn't all of a sudden make us think about that. It's been a top priority for us. And a continued investment. There's $2 million additional dollars in this year's budget on top of the salary raises for our security officers. We continue to see classes of our security officers come through every year, and higher caliber people who are coming into that, retired veterans, people from other police forces as well. And so I'm really confident with where we are. I mean, safety, you can never guarantee 100%. All you can do is continue to adjust and adapt. And
so is that a thorough way of saying, no, we don't need guns in our school by teachers?
Yeah, I would say, I would say this, with the new law that's there, I don't feel Knox County needs to exercise the provisions allowed in it.
I'm curious as to whether you have had any demand, any input from the public for it. People saying, we think this ought to happen. I think we heard a whole lot of people saying, oh no, we do not want this, especially parents who, once they learned they could not be notified, they would not be able to know whether the teacher or custodian or whomever staff member, whether they were armed or not. A lot of that, but did you hear any input from the public of anybody saying, yeah, we really like it, you should do it?
I think in a city the size of Knoxville, you're going to have a lot of diverse opinions, and so we haven't looked for the input on it because, quite frankly, we're still trying to make sure we're interpreting the law correctly and those sorts of things. But you get emails and things like that, and I think a lot of people, like you said, are at the place where that's not a good idea. But I mean, there are some folks who are always going to represent the other side as well. But I think by and large, I would agree with what you're saying. What we're hearing is, we have folks who do that. Teachers need to be teaching, and I would agree with that.
I was just going to say, we've got two resolutions that are coming up for school board, one from Christy and one from Catherine Bike. They essentially sort of say the same thing, although they kind of put the onus on one side or the other.
Well, they get to the end,
yes,
the same end.
They kind of get, but one of them is like, the school board is not going to go along with this, that's Bike, and then you've got Christy who's like, we've got plenty of law enforcement, we don't need it. Does it matter to you which one of these might end up being adopted? They have no force of law, but
right.
Do you care either way?
I would say, to me, they always do a good job talking through those things and figuring that out. My stance doesn't change either way. I think we are in a good place right now. I think we have safe schools because of all the measures that we have in place that I mentioned earlier. And I think supporting that and coming out in support of what is there is very important. So, to me, I've read both as well, and I think there are small differences between the two. I think to me the big picture is it appears, we'll see what the other members think, but that the board probably comes out and passes a resolution saying that it's not needed, the provisions of the current law.
Let's move to another move by the legislature this year. The governor wanted to see more public dollars used for private education, scholarships, vouchers, you name it, that's what he wanted. It didn't happen from the legislature. Would vouchers, if it had passed, help or hurt Knox County?
Well, I think, what we're seeing from the funding side, I mean, that's the thing you would always look at, what most people look for. I think there was a lot of things not sure. We saw the Senate had one version. We saw the House bring another. I think not knowing what those details would be. I heard the governor said things like there would be separate funding and increased funding both sides. I guess we never got to see what that was going to be because it didn't pass this year. For our stance has kind of been, I came out in January saying that, legislators are getting ready to go in. There will be a lot of things talked about. Our focus is going to be literacy, math, making sure our kids are ready when they graduate, and I can only focus on Knox County Schools. So that's been our focus all along, and making sure we get that done. And I think lots of times in the legislative season, you can spend a lot of time and energy looking at those things, and that's time that I'm not thinking about our kids doing what they need to do. And I think this is a good example of that. Had we spent a lot of time and energy and our staff worried and looking at those kinds of things, and then it didn't pass. So it kind of ended up being again, much to do about nothing. So we'll see what ends up happening.
But if it had passed, and I know that's theoretical,
Sure.
While I hear what you're saying, and you may be funded equally through other sources, it does affect, though, how much infrastructure, how many teachers, how many resources you put in each school. And if one school, for example, has a heavy voucher drain, doesn't that sort of mess up your formula and really cause you guys to have to backpedal very quickly?
I would say there's some assumptions there, because I'm a pretty competitive guy, and our thing is we're going to take on any competitors and have the better choice. We've seen that some, I think, in the private sector in Knox County. When you go to other large cities in Knoxville, in the state, you see a lot of different private schools. Knoxville has had kind of some historic ones, but not a whole lot of folks. There's, by and large, most of our families choose our public system.
That's right.
And I think they'll continue to. And so our job is to make sure that it is as competitive or better than any competition that's out there.
And again, I think it's important to look at, where vouchers were probably going to end up being targeted, which are a lot of our communities that have more failing schools than we do in Knox County. I mean, Knox County is still the best large school system in the state, better than Nashville or Memphis. So I think you're comparing apples to oranges a little bit in Knox County, because again, I think most parents choose Knox County Schools because they trust the leadership that's been there for years, they trust the teachers, and they've done a good job for students. Could it be better? I think we all agree that we could always do better for our kids. But when you look at some of the other areas, I don't see any school in Knox County where the valedictorian is getting a 14 on the ACT like we saw in Shelby County. 88 of their 160 schools were in the bottom 5%. We don't have that in Knox County. So you got to look at economics of what's happening in the state to see where probably more of those vouchers would have been used than I think here in East Tennessee.
You and I can argue this a long time, because I think it would only hurt us.
Well, we will have that debate another day, but we're going to be back with Dr. Rysewyk about the future heading into summer and also into next year, your priorities, and we'll be back with that right after this.